Steve O'Brien here. I am a clinical child adolescent psychologist, and thanks for tuning in. Going to speak with you for a few minutes today with a little preview with one of my digital seminars called Kids in the Crossfire of Divorce and Blended Families. So this is a one-day webinar that you can register and purchase at PESI.com/divorce. And this course will help prepare you as a clinician or a counselor or social worker, case manager, to have a better idea of what children experience when they go through divorce, particularly at different ages and with different temperaments, and how you can assist children directly, therapeutically, but also how you can work with parents with some co-parenting strategies and guidelines to help them assist their children, because that's a huge part of how children navigate divorce, is how much their parents are prepared to deal with their own emotions and issues, and therefore being able to be there for their children. So obviously it can be quite a daunting task to assist both parents and kids, but I have some guidelines that I think will help. So first of all, one of the things I like to point out whenever I talk about divorce is that there is a bit of a double-edged sword attitude about it. So for example, it's great that society in general, I think, stigmatizes divorce less. So I do think it can be a little easier for children to at least find other children that are in a similar situation, helps them not feel as unique in a negative manner. Now, however, at the same time, what I find sometimes happens is because divorce is unfortunately common, it can also sometimes be minimized in terms of its effects, meaning that it's important to remember divorce is still a very significant stressor for children. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it's traumatic for every child. That depends on a lot of factors, both within the child and in the child's environment. But it certainly is distressing. And it's also important to keep in mind that divorce has a lot to do with loss. In fact, a series of losses. We have losses from the one parent is no longer in the household. That may be the loss of a neighborhood because the family has relocated. There may be loss of a pet, having them right there with them because maybe the pet is now in another residence. There could be loss of neighborhood connections. There may be loss of certain extracurricular activities due to some financial stressors. So really important to also keep in mind that the divorce does usually involve a series of losses for children. This seminar also does talk to some degree about blended families, and we'll touch on that as well. So not only is divorce about loss, but then if there is a remarriage or a new person, new partner for one of the parents that has gotten divorced, now there is a stressor that's an addition. So now having to acclimate to a new person, perhaps in their household part of the time or full time, and perhaps other kids from this other person that they are now also trying to acclimate to. Sometimes I hear parents say things like, well, they really like my boyfriend or girlfriend, or they really like my new partner's kids. Well, that's great, but that doesn't mean that they're ready to live with them, right? So that's, again, a process that really should have a lot of preparation. And we do talk about that at length in the seminar. So let's talk a little bit about how you can help parents prepare for some of the communication struggles when it comes to kids and divorce. So for example, one of the things you want to help parents do is, of course, learn to validate their children's feelings. So as therapists, we do this all the time, and it's natural for us with our clients or patients, but it may not be so natural for certain parents. So help them understand that validation really means reflecting the child's feelings and thoughts to some degree too, and then helping them understand that it's okay, that the feelings are okay. Not that everything is going to be okay necessarily. That kind of reassurance doesn't always work right away, but to be able to say it's understandable to feel that way. Lots of kids would feel that way. So when kids come to parents and they say the infamous why, it's sometimes better to teach parents again to validate, say, I know this is really hard, and you probably have a lot of feelings about this. A lot of kids get angry or scared, and I understand that. And then when it comes to those whys, you have to give an age appropriate explanation, right? But it has to be tailored to the child's age. And keep in mind that an explanation isn't necessarily going to cut it anyway. Like, you can give a simple explanation. You can help parents prepare for an explanation. Dad and I, or mom and I, were having a hard time being happy living together. And we tried, but every time we tried, it didn't work very well. And we decided that even though it would be hard for everybody at first, we would be happier if we weren't living together. Now, that being said, it's very rare that an explanation like that results in a kid saying, "Oh, great, okay, thanks, I'm good now." So what that's going to usually do is it may or may not temporarily appease them, but they will come back either then or very soon with another "but why?" And that's where you have to help parents shift from explanation back to reflection and validation. This is really hard for you. I can see that it makes you worry. And let's talk about some things that can help you feel better right now. So some of those self-soothing sorts of strategies that all of us are pretty familiar with. So helping parents address questions is sometimes better than teaching them that they have to, or instructing them that they have to answer. So I usually like to say to parents, you don't have to answer every question, you have to address it. And that means reflecting, validating. And when answers are needed and you don't feel ready, you can say, "I want to give you a really good answer to that. I need some time to think about it so that I really can say it the way I want to say it." So it is okay for parents to buy time, as long as they don't do it in an avoidant way where they never get back to it, because kids will come back at you. So I do see that some of you have some comments and questions and saying hello. So hello, everybody. Again, if you are interested, hi, Michigan. If you are interested in the course, it is a virtual or digital seminar. I do sometimes do this live at times. I don't have a scheduled one live coming up, but it is available for purchase as a digital seminar. Go to PESI.com/divorce to register. All right, so practical approaches to help kids stuck in the middle. The title of the seminar is actually Kids in the Crossfire of Divorced and Blended Families. So let's get back to a point I made a little bit ago, but I want to elaborate on, which is that children's reactions to divorce can largely depend, of course, on age, but it also is dependent on temperament. And so it's important to keep in mind the three primary temperaments that Thomas and Chess talked about in their longitudinal research many decades ago, but it's classic research. Keeping in mind that parents sometimes need this information so they feel prepared for their child's reactions. Some children tend to be more easy-tempered, and those are kids that may seem to adjust a little more easily. They may seem to be a little less distressed. And while they do tend to be resilient, the danger for those kids is sometimes they tell you what you want to hear. Sometimes they overfunction. Sometimes they try to take care of the parent emotionally. And sometimes you don't find out that they actually are struggling until like months later. So help some parents know that they may need to do a little more normalization of various feelings for kids like that by saying, I'm glad that you say you're doing well, but I just want you to know lots of kids do get angry, scared, and worried, and that's okay, and I can handle that. So if at any point you're thinking or feeling anything like that, you can let me know. The second temperament, beyond easy, is the opposite, if you will, difficult or challenging kids, sometimes referred to as disinhibited because they're very reactive. They tend to be much more disruptive, have a tendency towards aggression, that sort of thing. So they will respond to the distress of a divorce in a much more agitated, irritable fashion, more anger. They also may become more disruptive at school. They may take anger out on a younger sibling or on some of their friends. So it's important to help parents prepare for that kind of behavioral response and help them not view it simply as acting out and disrespect and disruption, but help them see it is a level of distress. That doesn't mean I'm saying it's good or okay, but those kids need more outlets so they can get that intensity out in okay ways. They may need more physical outlets. They may need more ways to be physical in terms of sports. They may need more just physical activity in general. And they may need to be able to, hit punching bags and things like that. And so sometimes those kind of outlets can help. They also do need to be de-escalated, but sometimes you have to help get the energy out first and then help them self-soothe. The third temperament is slow to warm up. And that's sometimes referred to as an inhibited temperament because they tend to be very internalized in a lot of their responses. So these are kids that are most likely to respond to the distress of divorce with a lot of tearfulness, withdrawal, psychosomatic symptoms like stomach aches and headaches, separation anxiety. Though they also may regress, so a child that has mastered toilet training, for example, may start wetting the bed or themselves again. Some of these kids also will engage in regressive talk that we sometimes refer to as, baby talk, trying to get that kind of attention. So help parents prepare for that. These kids usually need more time in one-on-one situations, and they also respond well to being able to express themselves in artistic and creative ways, such as drawing, for example. And they do need usually a lower level of stimulation. So meaning that they are much more likely to be overstimulated in certain environments because there's already so much going on in their head that sometimes they can have these little mini panic episodes that you aren't necessarily prepared for as a parent. So those are some things that you can do to help the parents prepare for the different kinds of temperamental responses based on their child's temperament. One of the main things that, of course, is really important when it comes to divorce and blended family situations is to be able to help parents with co-parenting. That sounds nice and easy, and it isn't. But there's a few guidelines that I try to impart to clinicians when I'm training clinicians and to parents when I'm working with them in my office. One of the first ones is obviously you're going to assess the temperature, right? What's the temperature of this relationship between these two parents that are divorcing or are recently divorced? So it's really important to know that you may need to spend some one-on-one parent session time with them before you do too much together. If you find you're with parents and you're having to jump in a lot and referee, then it may signal that they could benefit from some individual time with each of you. If you do that, make sure you do it in a balanced fashion. Obviously, meet with one parent for a session or two, meet with the other parent for a session or two. Always keep it balanced. And what you want to do is make sure that you show them that you can handle their intensity, but it's not going to be helpful to spend the time in session going over all of that stuff. That you understand it. You can have some individual parent sessions to address it more. They may want to consider individual therapy for each of themselves to address it. What you want to do is validate it and then redirect them back onto the task at hand, which is how do we help the two of you communicate in a civil fashion and do some level of negotiation and compromise. And sometimes that is not even possible. And when negotiation and compromise aren't possible, the second best is at least to leave each other alone. Now, obviously, we still want some level of communication, but it may have to be low-level communication. It may just have to be through emails or texts. And even then, they may need some specific training about how to do so in ways that are not emotionally charged and sarcastic and passive-aggressive. Helping them understand that the more that they can develop civility with each other, their child will benefit. Because research is really clear on post-divorce conflict being a major predictor of poor functioning in children who suffer, who experience divorce. So post-divorce conflict is a real predictor of lowered chances of functioning for a child over time. And parents need to know that. One of the things I sometimes help parents do is to mind their own bubble, which is the idea that each of their households may have a different kind of setup in terms of parenting styles and structures and schedules. Is it nice when two parents can get on the same page or at least in the same chapter in some ways with their parenting and their structure at home? Yes. But if they cannot, the second best thing is, again, respect the other person's bubble, even if you don't agree with it, and stop trying to interfere in the other person's household or bubble, because that kind of tension and conflict is felt by the child, and the discrepancy between the households can be something the child can be supported through to manage better than if the parents continue to be in conflict about the differences. Sometimes I'll say low conflict beats symmetry, right? I would rather there be low conflict between parents and discrepant styles and discrepant schedules in households than each parent beating up the other, so to speak, trying to influence that household, and the child feels that tension. I'll make one final point, and I'll also see if there's any questions. I do see Shauna has a question. How do you deal with a scenario when you have one child very angry at one parent and other child more neutral, but specifically the anger that occurs between the kids with this difference of opinion with heightened emotions, trauma, hurt, and loss? Well, let's see if I can address that to some degree, Shauna. One thing that first you have to do is help parents prepare for emotional vacillation. Fancy way of just saying kids, depending on age and depending on personality and temperamental factors, will at times idealize one parent, devalue the other, align with one parent, be resistant or opposed to the other. And sometimes it flips, so it can vacillate. It's helpful to sometimes help parents recognize that these children are much more upset about the process than they necessarily are with one particular parent, but that's how it's being expressed. It's really being their overall turmoil and distress about the whole process gets displaced onto one parent at times and at times onto the other. And so helping parents not see it and take it as personally, which again is a process to help them through, give children outlets for those emotions that are appropriate versus simply looking at it as a behavioral, disrespectful kind of a thing. It's really important to say it's not okay to say it that way, but I understand you're mad or worried or angry. Let's see how we can help you get that emotion out. That's the short answer. Obviously, it can be a little more complicated than that, but hopefully that's a little bit helpful for now. I'm going to make one more point. When it comes to blended families and when it comes to step parents in particular, keep in mind the research is pretty clear on this. We've heard this before, but keep it in mind and help parents and step parents understand this. When it comes to new step parents, connection before correction is very important, meaning a relationship that gradually develops between this step parent and the kid needs to happen before that step parent can take a significant parental role. Before that, the step parent should be consulting with the primary parent, and that primary parent is still the deliverer of the discipline, and so on and so forth. It's got to be a very gradual process for a step parent to take on that role. Otherwise, triangles develop, and lots of tension and conflict and oppositional behavior develops, which is really due to a lot of resentment that the child has for this step parent being like mom or dad in their eyes. So connection before correction is extremely important. Probably the only exceptions to that with very young children that are really craving a parental figure. But beyond that, it usually doesn't work well for step parents to really take on that parental role too quickly. Well, I hope that was helpful. Again, if you are interested in learning more about helping kids and parents when it comes to navigating divorce and blended family situations, go to PESI.com/divorce to register for kids in the Crossfire of divorce and blended families. Again, this is a digital seminar. I may be doing it live at some point in the future. I think you also have a QR code on your screen that you can also scan to get right to the link. So I hope this was helpful, and I hope that you will join me in a future seminar. Take care. Oh, one more thing. I forgot one more thing. If you are interested in anxiety treatment, I do also do seminars on anxiety in kids, 1 and 2 day seminars. Also, a one on anxiety in the classroom for teachers. That's a freebie on February 24th. And finally, I have a book coming out with PESI, hopefully in the next few months, called Treating Child Anxiety Step by Step. So take a look for that. Hopefully it will be out soon.